Welcome everyone to the Reinventing You podcast. This is the space where we are sharing Reinventing You stories. This is the space that if you're looking to reinvent your life, whether that's around health and wellness, whether that's around career and finances, maybe it's around relationships, maybe it's around self and well-being or your spirituality. This is the space where we have teachers, mentors, leaders sharing their Reinventing You stories, not only so you don't know that you're not alone, but so that you can have tools and strategies and tips that you can take with you to really feel supported in the Reinventing You process and have access to their information. So if you'd like to reach out to them, you can do that. So I am so excited. It is the first of the year, and so many people focus on health and wellness and fitness as they start out the year, and they really want to reinvent that part of their lives. So no better time than the present to have a health, wellness, and fitness coach come on and share his story, as well as some tips and tools that you can take with you. So I am so excited to do a quick introduction for our very special guest, Jerry Snider. He is not only a health, wellness, and fitness coach, he is an athlete, an author, an entrepreneur, and a podcast host. With his degree in exercise and physiology from Texas A&M University, his experience as a competitive high-level distance runner and collegiate track and field athlete, and having overcome his own battles of weight gain and health issues, Jerry has a wealth of knowledge and tools to transform the lives of those seeking to reach their health and fitness goals. As a certified life breakthrough coach, Jerry believes in a practical approach to solving problems. So whether you're living a sedentary lifestyle or a moderate to competitively active lifestyle, Jerry is a coach that focuses on discovering and eliminating the true source of his client's pain rather than just treating those symptoms, which is why he's making a name for himself across health, wellness, and fitness blogs, publications, and podcasts everywhere. We are so excited and honored to have you today, Jerry Snider. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me on, Alyssa. I'm excited.
Yeah. So tell us about you. Tell me a little bit about you, and then I want to hear all about your story of when you reinvented yourself in life.
Well, yeah. So I live down here in Texas, and I was born in Texas, raised outside of Texas, but came back for school and stayed ever since. And it's something that I love being able to be outside.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's a big piece of how I reinvented myself is using the outside space. But I was, I think like a lot of people in that I graduated college and didn't have a clue what I was going to do because I didn't have that other than being an athlete, which, a very, very small percentage of people not only move on to college, but move on after that.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, well, now what? And I just fell in line, I think, with what everybody else sort of does. If they don't know what they're doing, they just go get a job. Like, what's the first job I can get? And went into several different, avenues of employment in different fields and never really found that thing that stuck because I sort of ignored what my calling was in doing health and fitness stuff.
Yeah.
And I think part of the piece of the reinventing that, you wanted to talk about was that I gained, about 50 pounds during that time of sitting behind a desk and doing things that I didn't really like. Maybe I was good at it, but, good enough to keep a job. But every 3 or 4 years, it was, okay, I'm done with this one, time to move on to something else.
Yeah.
And then I got this calling back to get back into health and fitness about 5-6 years ago. And the first thing I did to do that was, I've got to live by example. I think a lot of people appreciate that. And so I lost the 50 pounds that I gained in order to get back, my health and fitness and then be able to prove to people like, I understand it's tough, it's hard, but you can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us, dive into that. So what's interesting is, there's this part of you that was passionate about and driven in the field of being fit and athletic and active and outdoors. And then life hit and we all have this, I know you have a family of children. And so we have this mindset that, we've got to go get the job, buy the house, have the family. And that's just how you're supposed to be. But we all have this inner knowingness and calling and something that's driving us. And it sounds like not only was that something that you long to serve in and teach
Mhm.
about, but that you found yourself almost in this spot of you had to reinvent yourself in life in losing this weight that
Right.
propelled you back into this space that you were so passionate about. So yeah, please dive into, the journey of what you think contributed to your weight gain, and then maybe how you began to lose it.
Well, and it's funny because it really all started with, I had the idea to be an online coach and use the internet and all of that right when I got out of college, which was the mid to late 90s, which the internet was in its infancy, like especially compared to what it is now. Like it was nothing, we still had dial up and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I asked a couple of friends, and friends that were my age, but also their parents and like people that had been around, like, okay, I have this idea. What do y'all think? And they were like, it'll never work. It'll never fly. It'll never,
Mm.
that's not what the internet's for. And
Wow.
so I just stuffed it down and said, okay, yeah, like you said, like go get a job, met my wife at the time. And so it was like, we're getting ready to get married, getting ready to start a family, doing all those things. And it was like, yep, just fall in line and do what everybody says. And I think it's just even though I had all the knowledge to be fit, I had all the knowledge to know what to eat. I think I just got caught up in the flow of everybody else. It's just sort of, we're going to do the holiday parties. We're going to do the birthday parties. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. You're going to have to eat at your desk because it's so busy at work, and never took the time for me, because that's really not what society's all about. It's not about the me time. It's about doing what everybody else tells you should do and trying to keep up with
Right.
everybody else. And
Yeah.
so, I never had that me time, and I neglected exercise to the point where it became a weekend warrior. And then it was like, okay, well, I get injured every time I try this because I haven't been stretching, I haven't been exercising. And so you go out and you try and play a pickup game of basketball or something, and you're sore for 4 days,
Yeah.
and you don't want to do it anymore, And so I totally get where a lot of people are.
Yeah. Well, and so
But
many people say, they're like, gosh, I'm just older now. So my body is weak and I'm frail,
right.
and that just comes with age. And I don't believe that that's how it has to be. I believe that there's a health and wellness and system that you can maintain. But as you spoke
Mhm.
to, it's that me time that we're neglecting. And in that me time, that's where you're maintaining your longevity for life. And so
Right.
you get to choose. You can live this sedentary lifestyle and be stuck when you're however old and not be able to move. And that could be, it just depends on the person and their
Right.
consistency. But yeah, I absolutely understand that. So you found that, you've gained this weight, but you're kind of actively getting engaged in things. But even in doing that, you're kind of hindering, and you're not really wanting to progress forward because you're finding you're in physical pain.
Yeah. And being an athlete at a higher level, and thinking in my head, like my body should be able to do this, this, and this, and it should be easy, and it wasn't anymore.
Yeah.
And so it made it really easy to just say, I'm not going to do that. I'm just not, it's not worth it to put myself through that pain. Um, to try and, because people would be like, hey, why don't you run this 5K and support us? And I'm like, no, I'm not gonna. I'm like, because I know the level that I need to be at, and I'm not there, and so I'd just ignore it and say, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And then it got what there's two things that got me to the point where I said, okay, this is enough. One is, a lot of people kept asking me for advice, and I was like, okay, they're asking me for advice. I'm giving it away for free. Like, is this a sign that maybe this should turn into a side hustle or maybe a full-time thing?
Yeah.
And then the other thing was, on a personal level, was that when I graduated college, and I get it, I was a long distance runner. So I know that, like, when I graduated college, I wasn't necessarily the normal physique of person. But I was at a 28 to 29 waist in pants. And when I got to where I was wearing a 40 and about to go up to a 42, I was like, no, this isn't happening.
Yeah.
Change is happening right now. And I know a lot of people get to that point, that whether it's a certain size that you never thought you would be, or, heaven forbid, an actual event happening where, like, a heart attack or a stroke, or the high blood pressure medication that you never thought you'd have to be on, when the doctor tells you you've gone too far. And I knew that 40 was like, that was not going to happen for me. And so I had to make a change. And those two things coincided time-wise. They happened right about the same time. And so as I started to look into, doing this as a business on my own, like I said, I got to lead by example. And so I took the first 6 months, and I'm a runner, but the first 6 months I didn't even run. I just trained in other ways and worked my nutrition, because I knew if I tried to run, it was just too much weight on my knees and my joints. And
So
I'd
what
have an
did you do
injury.
for movement?
A lot of cycling, a lot of walking.
Okay.
So the first 4 to 6 months was basically that, and dropping about 20 to 25 pounds, the initial weight. And then the next year, it took me a whole nother year to drop the other 25 pounds. So I want to make sure I point that out, that was a year and a half basically to drop that 50 pounds that it took me, it 15 or 18 years to put on.
Yeah.
But so when you look at it in that aspect, I know a lot of people want to lose, 20 pounds in 2 weeks, or
Right.
like they have these huge goals. It's great to have those huge goals, but to know that realistically, the healthy way to do it takes time.
Yeah, and absolutely. And with social media and things like that, we're constantly comparing ourselves, or even other, fitness professionals, they post a picture of their before and their after, but they're not giving the time frame of that and what it takes to maintain that. So not only does it take time, but then the maintenance, and understanding your body and continuing to develop it so you can continue to stay active and keep that metabolism going and kind of kickstart it back, because doesn't our metabolism kind of shift with age and nutrition? And then we think we have to keep the same system, but we should probably be diverse in our exercise choices and nutrition choices to really have longevity and results. I mean, if you could speak to that as well.
Yeah, your body changes. I think we all know that. And whether you're like from a skinny to fat standpoint, but just your body changes, your cellular, the way like you said, your metabolism works, everything works. It starts to slow down in some ways, and other ways starts to speed up as you age. Aging can speed up if you don't feed yourself properly. You can speed up the aging process, and which is why you might see somebody. I went to a national race last year, in 2019, and for my age group, when I lined up on the line, and my wife says, you don't belong in that age group. Like, you look much younger than everybody else on the line. And so we're all the same age within 5 years, but she was like, you look so much younger. And the point being, I think the point from that being that, like, you can exercise your way to being thin, and you can eat your way to being thin. But if you do both, you're going to, stop the aging process, or not, maybe not stop it, but you're going to slow it down a lot.
Sure.
And so there is a big piece of both of those factors that come into play with aging, and how you keep your metabolism going higher, like when you were 18 or 20, and you could eat whatever you wanted, and you wake up the next morning, you had plenty of energy, and no matter how long you stayed up the night before, and you could pull those all-nighters and party all the time and do all those things that we all did in our teens and 20s. Now if you try them in your 40s, I'm in my mid 40s, you try them in your 50s, and you're like, you're down for a week, and it's like, oh my gosh, how could I do that back then?
Yeah. Well, food becomes almost like this weird hangover. Like, if you eat really bad, I feel like I was like in my 20s, and I'm like recovering from drinking or something. Yeah.
Right. And even though your cells, like, there's a specific timeline for your cells to rejuvenate, depending on the organ, depending on where it is in your body. I still believe that even though there is that timeline, it's slower as you get older. So it only takes a couple hours for your cells in your digestive tract to rejuvenate. So if you really screw them up and eat something really bad, for lunch, you're going to have all new cell lining, by the next day. And so, the after effects aren't going to last as long. And of course, the newer those cells are, the quicker they're going to be able to fight off anything.
Yeah.
But I definitely believe that the older you get, the longer it takes for those cells to rejuvenate.
Sure.
And so then it's sort of like you're fighting a battle with an old army and old military, or you're fighting a 21st century battle with the 17th century, military. So you want to make sure that you're at tip top shape, as far as technology, if you will, in your body.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting too is I know you work with youth as well
Mhm.
as adults, and you work with athletes that are striving to really have peak performance and get those college scholarships and things like that. And I enjoy following, what's his name? Sean Stevenson. Are you familiar with
Yeah.
him?
Mhm.
Yeah. And I heard him speaking the other day just about, like, he was a pretty good athlete and
Yep.
how he eats now versus, like, even though he was younger and he was eating crap and 7-Eleven and stuff like that, he's like, what kind of athlete could I have been if
Right.
I nutritionally had made better choices, if I had the knowledge, if I had a Jerry Snider by my side to help me, like, guide me in the process of having my true peak performance. Like, if I want that scholarship, if I can show up and not have to work harder, I just eat healthier. And even if it's not perfect, you know, he spoke to, like, even if it's like improving 2 meals a day,
Right.
1 meal a day, like making that gradual thing. You may feel like you wake up really great now, but imagine what kind of performance you could have if you just made those slight improvements. Do you
Right.
have any suggestions or what you might teach me, as, you know, I'm in my 40s, or, you know, a young athlete on, you know, from a nutritional standpoint, how can I have better peak performance? Any recommendations around that?
Well, I think, one of the things that I've said that usually gets, whenever I do a speaking arrangement, like engagement or anything, I'll mention this, and it usually gets at least 2 or 3 people afterwards to go like, I've never thought of that. And it's, yes, you want to make the positive changes in your food and get the things that are healthier, eat more vegetables and fruits because they've got the vitamins and minerals, and they're typically not, if you're getting non-GMO and all that kind of stuff, you're typically getting higher quality.
Mm-hmm.
But it's knowing what not to put in your body, and not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily like, we all know that we shouldn't eat donuts or we shouldn't have ice cream or we shouldn't, that's, but what specifically hits your gut in a certain way that is going to throw your performance off.
How
And
do you learn that?
a little bit, you can do it through trial and error. And that's one of the things that is a benefit of being older, because you start to realize, like, I'll mention my wife, because she says it every time. She's like, whenever I drink wine the next day, I'm bloated and I feel horrible. And I'm, and it doesn't matter how much, like, she can have a shot glass worth of wine and the next morning she's going to feel it,
Yeah.
and 20 years ago, she didn't know that. She didn't,
Right.
and
She wasn't aware of it. Yeah.
she wasn't aware. She was still having those feelings, but she wasn't aware that that's what was doing it. But now that she's eating so much cleaner, so I think there's a piece of it is not necessarily going to an elimination diet of getting everything out, but if you're suspecting something, and the big culprits are dairy, gluten, or processed wheat, because typically it's going to have either the gluten or glyphosate, which is Roundup, is going to be something that's sensitive to your gut, which is going to throw off your hormones and your neurotransmitter production. And so anything that's messing with how your brain functions is going to mess up your performance, even in physical, performance areas. So those two are big areas. And then anything that's got that's high in antibiotic or preservatives, because that's gonna interfere with your gut. And so that's something that I think a lot of people don't know, is that somewhere between 80 and 85% of antibiotics that are purchased in our country are purchased by farmers. And so it's going into the food system.
And they're pesticides and all that stuff. Is that what you're?
Yeah. And so pesticides are antibacterial. And when you consume it, it's killing the bacteria in your gut. Some of that bacteria is good bacteria that you want in your gut. It's helping create neurotransmitters. It's helping create, hormones. It's helping create the stuff that's actually helping you perform. So, so yeah, if you can find those things that trigger you, and a lot of times you'll know, because either you're getting rashes or you're bloating or you're getting headaches, those things that you're like, I just feel off, brain fog, those types of things that you're like, something I ate. And sometimes it's 72 hours. Sometimes it can be a little longer if it's really something you're sensitive to. But don't just go back to what I have for breakfast. No, it's like, what did I have for breakfast the last 3 days?
Yeah.
What did I have for lunch the last 3 days? Is there something that could have been off?
Do you recommend like food journaling? Like, okay, I'm
Mhm.
super bloated today. So the last 3 days, let me record what I've eaten and then recognize maybe when I eat that food again.
Yeah.
Do I feel the same, or is my body responding the same?
Yeah, that is, I mean, it's for people that are detail oriented and have that, that part of them, that's really good. For somebody that's not detail oriented, and it's one of the things I tend to tell people, like, I don't count calories. I don't, I mean, because one is, if everybody enjoyed counting calories and understanding how that worked, we'd all be accountants. Like, and so if you don't want to deal with numbers, don't count calories. If you don't enjoy math, don't count calories. It's going to just drive you nuts.
There's other ways to reach your goals. That's good to hear.
Yeah. And it starts with understanding that you need fruits and vegetables. And so planning your meals to where they're 80% fruits and vegetables and eating those first in the meal, so that, or doing, 2 bites of vegetables and 1 bite of protein or 5, so that you're mixing that up and but heavy on that side of it. So you don't get to the end and go, well, I ate the steak, but the salad's still there and the broccoli's still there, but I'm full.
Yeah.
And so you may have put it on your plate and you feel good because you put it on your plate, but it doesn't help unless it actually goes in you.
You're right. Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's great. So in your journey, you've gained this weight, and then you decide, okay, I'm going to make the transition. I'm size 40. This isn't where I want to be. And so you began to gradually incorporate fitness and nutrition. Mm-hmm. And you took, what did you say, like 1.5 years to really lose that weight?
Yeah.
Is that, so what have you done to maintain it? And what do you recommend for someone who's kind of just starting out, and then somebody who's maybe lost the weight but struggling to kind of maintain it? Any recommendations there?
So now I've journeyed back to the high competitive athletics. So for myself, I do between 1.5 hours to 2 hours a day of athletic endeavoring, some type of workout. Usually 5 to 6 days a week. So, I am an extreme, and I'll highly admit that. So you don't have to sit there and think, oh my gosh, I got to start working out 2 hours a day. No, you don't. That's for me to be able to maintain that. And for a reference point, 2 years ago when I ran in that race, in the national race, it put me in the top 80 in the world in my age group. So, I'm on the extreme.
Sure.
But for the average person to be able to get to their health goal and maintain, one thing you have to remember is that if you're just trying to maintain the status quo, you're eventually going to start falling behind. So you do need to have some sort of goal out there, to hit. And it's easy when it is a weight goal. It's easy, or it's a size of clothing goal. It's easy to have that. But then once you hit that, like you said, well, then now what do I do?
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that I caution people for doing, a fad diet, or, eating the way that, my cousin ate because he lost weight. What you need to do is you need to know that when you get close to your goal weight, you're going to have to transition into a different way of eating, and you're going to have to transition into a different way of working out, because there's one thing to like stoke the fire and get it started, but it's another thing to keep it going. You don't have to do as much to keep it going if you get it going in the right way. It doesn't take a lot to keep the steam engine running down the track, but it takes an awful lot to get it started. Mm-hmm. And so as you get close to your goal, one, set another goal that's different. If your goal's a weight goal, set another goal out there that has to do with doing some sort of event, or, and it doesn't have to be a physical event. It could be, I've always been too heavy to ride a roller coaster. I've always been too heavy to, take this trip that I wanted to take, or, whatever it is. Set something that goes, okay, now that I'm this, I want to actually go do that.
Yeah.
With a time frame that you're going to actually do it in. So that you don't fall back and go, okay, I hit my goal. Now what? Well, I'll just go back to eating the way I used to, because then you're going to go back up the chart, which is not what anybody wants. But it is.
I can see where self-awareness must play a role in, one, identifying how do I feel versus how I felt before, because that's a source of a why and a push for maintenance. But then also the self-awareness of like, I love group fitness classes. Like, I just love them. They make me happy. I love the energy. I love just like being around other people pushing. I love the competitive aspect of that, being around it, where some people love to just sit and like be in their zone on the treadmill or running on, you know, in the streets. And some people love to weight lift. And I know for myself, like, I love fitness. I always have. And I have kind of gone in and out of it. I was a fitness coach at one point and I got out of it. But I'm finding like what you're speaking to, and that's why I want to bring it up, is that I'm 150 pounds. I'm like 22% body fat, right? I'm not like a stick. I've never been a stick, but I'm really fit for me. And I have been noticing that I have the last year, I've just been enjoying like being fit, being in my class setting. But now part of me is really curious about, how do I further define the muscles in my core? Because it's not something I've ever done. And so now I'm exploring weightlifting, because right now I do HIIT classes, right? Now I'm like, oh, I didn't even know like this was like a thing. Like, 'cause I've only ever done like cardio classes, and how impactful that can be on your body. I'm exploring other ways to do group exercises, but it's not the same atmosphere. I'm exploring nutrition, as you're speaking to, and more curious about what, in order to transform my body that way, what do I have to eat differently? And so I love that you're speaking to that, because it's so true. And I think that self-awareness of knowing, okay, I'm interested in this. I didn't like this. And it's not like this, okay, you just figure it out one day and then you're like on the track, but that there's this kind of ebb and flow to it to really create long-term success.
There is. And it's something that you might not be truly self-aware right now. You know, in the US, there's 70, I mean, I heard that it's actually going up closer to 75 now, percent of people that are overweight and obese. And like you mentioned, so, you know, that's having a BMI over 25. So BMI is height weight ratio. So that's being overweight. Over 30 is being obese. And like what happens, what I believe what happens, and I haven't seen research to show this, I don't know that anybody's actually researched it, but I think that once you get over 25 BMI and your body fat percentage is in that 28, 30, 35 range, like, you lose the cognitive ability to understand how your body truly feels, because you just always feel bad.
Sluggish. Oh,
like,
okay.
There's no place to compare it to.
Okay.
So it's like you're just, you go out and every game you play, you lose. And so you don't know what winning feels like because you've never won.
Okay.
And so that self-awareness is going to come as you start getting fit. The fitter you get, the more self-aware you're going to become. And so I definitely think that you also have to add in, for that me time, like you said, to find the thing that drives you. So your group fitness class, your weightlifting, your cycling, whatever that is, swimming, whatever that is that drives you. But then also make sure that you're spending time, you know, in other ways to benefit your spiritual health, your emotional health, because you don't want to get so caught up in the exercise piece that you're just become like a bully in exercise, and just like, it's just focus exercise. And then you get so caught up in it and you go, okay, well, how did I become this person?
Right.
You know? And so
Or
having that
people lose the weight
self-awareness,
and they're not even happy, like you're speaking to, like they're like, great, now what? Yeah. Okay. I get it.
And so to be self-aware and understand that, and it's one of the things that when I was an athlete in college, like, I didn't like, it was all about winning. And if it didn't win, you know, sort of like the Ricky Bobby movie line, like, if you're not first, you're last. Like, if I didn't win, I was miserable to be around. And now when I go to races, you know, I win some, but there's also, you know, 18-year-old kids that go out there and run against me, and, you know, in these 5Ks around town. And so, like, they'll win. Unfortunately, some of them are the ones that I coach. So it's like, I sort of know going into it, like, I know exactly how fast that person is. You know, but now I don't go into it with if I don't win, it's, you know, I didn't accomplish anything. There's things to accomplish through each event in life. And if you're self-aware and understanding, then, you know, like, I can go into a race and know that I'm going to get 4th or 5th place based on just what the competition level is, but say, well, my goal is to do this, whether it's a time or whether it's a pace level, or, you know, maintaining a pace that's even throughout the whole race, just to show where my fitness level is. There's a whole lot of different things that I look at now.
Yeah.
And that's an awareness piece that I didn't have when I was in college. So I think some of it does come with age, but I think a lot of the awareness as far as your health and how you feel comes with your actual physical fitness, where you actually are as far as body composition.
Yeah. I love that comment when you talked about, you come from this really competitive atmosphere and where winning and losing is really the indicator of success.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we'll have an audience of varying mindset, right? But that's the mindset piece you spoke to of like, for me, when I get out of a class, I feel really good if I did that extra rep and I'm like, when I'm sweating a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I get excited about that. But I'm like, yeah, cool. Or like if I didn't want to continue the reps and my coach made me and like dotted my face and I'm like, okay, yeah, fine, bring it. But that's my mindset piece. That's that's how I feel at the end, and recognizing that and like seeing that if you're all about wins and losses, that there's a really hard to find a degree of fulfillment. Right. That you can measure your successes in other ways. And you just spoke to that. And I love that because I think that's true of anywhere in life. When we are striving to reinvent ourselves, and we can sometimes go in such it's our mindset of wins and losses, black and white, when really there's this whole plethora of experience that we can pull from and really gain motivation from, feel accomplished from, and use that to propel us forward. Yeah, I love that you spoke to that. That was awesome. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that just popped in my head as you were saying is, I had multiple sales jobs and fundraising jobs and in the 20 years before I got into really what I'm doing now and my purpose. And one of the things that when I looked at, the graphs or how they looked at sales reps and how they, who was the best and who was not, and how were you doing, and were you reaching the goals? The close ratio that they really wanted, that was like if you hit this, you were great as far as how many sales appointments you had that you actually closed. It's like 30%, and it's sort of like baseball. Like if you hit 300 in baseball, you're an all-star.
Yeah.
But a lot of times we don't look at that and go into our own personal life and we're like, oh, I failed and I ate a cookie. And so I wasn't 100% healthy today, so I failed. No, if you were 98% healthy today, you were a success, especially if the day before, or you're coming off a history of being 60% healthy, or, in your nutrition decisions. So understanding that, to get an A is, 90 to 100, like give yourself some leniency, give yourself some credit that, it's okay to not hit the mark every time. As long as you're improving, as long as you're in that range where like, okay, this was successful.
Yeah, that's so great. And, I have a background in struggling. When I was in my early 20s, I was a compulsive eater, exerciser. I had done like 22 diets by the time I was in my early 20s. And then I became bulimic for a short period of time. And it was just constantly beating myself up. And I feel like I just need to say this because part of it's just I'm being drawn to it, but it doesn't matter where you're starting from. I don't care if you are 100 pounds overweight, 200 pounds overweight, 50 pounds overweight, or struggling with your behaviors with food. Like, just get started and celebrate the fact that I'm curious. I want to know more, and take the action and take those baby steps. And as you're speaking to, as I reinvented myself around my relationship with food and body image, it took me 2 to 3 years. And it's not to say it takes everybody that long, but what I had to do was I kept, kind of falling off the wagon and jumping back on, and being willing to go through the process of learning that self-awareness you speak to, of seeing, why am I drawn to eat this? And, I was taught you have to eat everything on your plate. And so I gained anxiety of any time there was food left. So I would box it up and put it in my fridge. And I didn't have to eat it, but I didn't waste it, because in my mind, that's wasting food is bad. So there's so many components of that process of transforming and reinventing yourself around health and wellness that goes beyond even that physical activity and nutrition. And you're speaking to it with the mindset piece. And just, I just want to speak to, it doesn't matter where you're at, it's okay. And just celebrate the fact that you're taking action, and know that it's not a perfect process. And as you're speaking to, celebrate your efforts along the way.
Right. And that's one of the things that I don't like some fad diets. I mean, I don't like most fad diets, but some of them are just that they're like everybody starts at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody either is not at that point already, or is not ready to be at that point, or is not ready for what week one looks like, or whatever that case is. And so when I work with clients for nutrition coaching and meal planning, here is tell me where you were at, like what are you dealing with, and let's make this as tailored as we can to where you are, so that you're successful after week one, you're successful after week two. And with my athletes, it's funny, but like I just had a first time athlete this past Sunday, and we got done with the hour training, and she was like, that was it. And I said, yeah. I said, because the first week, the first time I meet with you, or if I'm doing an exercise plan for you, the first week is actually going to be pretty easy, because I need to know where you're at. I need to make sure that you don't get overly sore, so that you don't ever want to do this again. When you get so sore, you don't want to get out of bed. Do you want to go to the gym again? No. You think that place hurt me.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want to go back.
Yeah.
I'd rather you go, that was so easy, I want to do it again.
Yeah. I love that.
And so, and I tell people, like, the first week or two, you're going to go, why am I paying this guy? This is so simple and so easy. You're paying me to get in the routine, so that when it becomes hard and when it becomes more difficult, your body's ready for it. Your range of motion is ready for it. And I think that's a big key that people don't understand, especially weekend warriors, is how much the sedentary life hurts your range of motion. And then when you try and call on it, because you used to be able to do this, or, whatever the reason, or, you want to show up your kids, whatever that is like, I'm going to do this activity right now. And then either you get hurt, or you can't walk for 4 days, or, whatever, because you're so sore. Most of that is range of motion, that your mind's telling your body to do it, and your body will do it from a fight or flight standpoint. Like, you can be walking around with sore muscles, pulled calf muscle, or, pulled hamstring, whatever. But if a lion comes around the corner, you're going to take off running. Right. Your body's going to be able to do it, because it's going to force you to do it from a survival standpoint. When you stop and you get away from that lion, your body's going to go, what the heck did I just do?
Yeah.
Same thing. When you get enough motivation to do something weekend warrior style, you're going to force your body to do it. You're just going to pay for it for 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
So I don't like to do that to people. I like to make sure that the range of motion is working right, that the muscles are stretched out right, that the basics, the form is correct, all those types of things. So my athletes, the first time I work with them, like anybody, running athletes, basketball athletes, football athletes, soccer athletes, it's, how do you walk? I'm going to teach you how to walk again. And they're like, but I'm 17. I know how to walk. I'm like, I understand that. But if you don't walk efficiently and properly, you're not going to run efficiently. And it's going to show even more in that, like for the poor efficiency in your running. So if we teach how to walk right, then we can run, and then we can compete.
Yeah.
Well,
I love that you're speaking. Yeah. Well, and I love that you're speaking to, it's our responsibility to recognize, and you're reminding me the value of a personal coach versus the fad, because the fad is, you're seeing these pictures of these people, but as you spoke to, your body's not even ready for that yet. Like, that's not even the program you should be doing. But when you get that specialized coach and somebody like you, that you're going to show me where my body is, how I can move, what's appropriate for my progression, and really help me get the results and long-term results. So I think that was really valuable. And I think you're doing amazing things, Jerry. And I want them to know where they can find you, as far as, on social media, your podcast, your website. Can you share with them some information?
Yeah. So the website's allinhealthandwellness.com. All spelled out, all, like no spaces or anything. Social media, I'm on Twitter, allinhealthwell, just because they don't have a lot of spaces on theirs.
Okay.
Instagram and Facebook, it's All in Health and Wellness.
Okay.
And then I've got 2 books on Amazon. You can just search Jerry Snider, be able to find those, but they're Confidence Through Health, and the other one is No More Sugarcoating. And the podcast is Confidence Through Health. I named that after the first book. So you can find it on all the podcast platforms. I've been very fortunate to be able to maintain a once a week, episode. I'm getting close to 100 episodes out there.
Woo, that's awesome.
So it's pretty cool. I do a mixture of interviewing people in the health world, but also just doing, solo episodes, sharing some thoughts of what's going on, what are the trends that people are talking about health, that there's, misconceptions or myths or questions that maybe they're not getting, valid answers because it's getting skewed one way or the other.
Yeah.
So,
well, thank you so much, Jerry. I want to close by is there one, if there's just one major tip that you knew from the beginning of your journey that you know now that you would like to share with anybody, no matter where they're at in their journey to be healthier, what would that tip be?
I think that, don't give up on yourself. I think is a big one because, it's sort of one of the things that I did. I sort of gave up on who I was, because I didn't think that I was good enough anymore, in a certain way. But as I said, now that I know them more of an awareness standpoint, don't give up on your physical self, because you're only going to pay for it in the future.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much, Jerry. This was wonderful. You provided so much valuable information on nutrition, on health, on mindset, on perspective, on self-awareness. They're going to gain so much from this. Thank you so much. And we will provide all your information below so they can find you. And I look forward to staying connected. Thank you, Jerry.
All right. Thanks, Alyssa.
Take care.